All right, ditch those complicated spreadsheets and forget about getting rich quick, because today we're diving deep into a personal finance classic that's all about simplicity and common sense.
You're talking about the Wealthy Barber, right?
Exactly.
Right.
This book's been a bestseller for a reason. It takes a refreshingly relatable approach to money management.
Yeah, using a fictional story about three friends learning financial wisdom from, wait for it, their barber.
I know, right? What's fascinating about this approach is how it breaks down potentially intimidating financial concepts
Oh.
into advice that anyone can understand. You're not bombarded with jargon or complex formulas.
Nope.
Instead, you get practical strategies woven into a story that feels like you're eavesdropping on a conversation with a wise friend.
Who just happens to be a master of building wealth.
Exactly. And that's where our main characters, Dave, Kathy, and Tom, come in.
They're just ordinary people, much like you and me, seeking some guidance on how to manage their money better.
Yeah, and they're initially a bit skeptical about taking financial advice from a barber.
But Roy, our insightful barber, quickly proves that financial wisdom can be found in the most unexpected places.
That's for sure.
Roy's golden secret is surprisingly simple, actually.
What is it?
Save and invest 10% of your net income every single month.
Okay, I have to admit, when I first heard about the 10% rule, I thought, sure, that sounds easy in theory, but where am I supposed to find that extra money in my budget? But Roy doesn't just tell you to save. He gives you a practical, actionable plan to make it happen.
He calls it paying yourself first, and it's all about making that 10% savings automatic. Non-negotiable even. Think of it like a bill you absolutely have to pay each month.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you just set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to a dedicated savings or investment account. Treat it as a top priority. What's interesting here is that this simple shift in mindset can make a world of difference.
It's like taking the decision-making out of the equation. The money is automatically saved before you even have a chance to spend it. But what about those of us who are already struggling to make ends meet? Is saving 10% even realistic in that situation?
That's a really valid concern, and Roy addresses it head-on, actually. He acknowledges that everyone's financial situation is different, and he encourages readers to start where they are.
Oh, okay.
Even if you can only manage 1% or 5% at first, the key is to make a commitment to saving consistently and gradually increasing that amount as your income grows.
So it's about building that savings habit, even if it starts small,
Yeah,
and letting that momentum carry you forward.
exactly.
But let's get to the really exciting part, compound interest. Roy describes it as the eighth wonder of the world.
And honestly, after reading his explanations, I can see why.
Me too.
What's often overlooked about compound interest is that it's not just about earning interest on your initial investment. You're also earning interest on the interest you've already earned. Over time, this creates a snowball effect that can lead to some pretty incredible results.
Right.
Roy illustrates this with a powerful example. Saving just $30 a month from age 18 with an average annual return of 15% could potentially grow to a staggering $2 million by the time you retire.
Wow, $2 million from just $30 a month. That's the magic of compound interest in action.
Yeah.
But I have to push back a little here. A 15% average annual return, isn't that a bit optimistic, especially over such a long time period?
You're right to question those assumptions. Roy emphasizes that 15% is just an example to illustrate the power of compounding, and past performance is never a guarantee of future results. He advocates for a long-term, diversified approach to investing, focusing on low-cost index funds and mutual funds that track the overall market. While 15% may be ambitious, aiming for consistent returns in the 7–10% range, which aligns with historical market averages, is a more realistic and achievable goal.
So it's not about chasing those flashy, high-risk investments that promise quick riches. It's about steady, consistent growth over time. Which brings us to the question of where and how to invest that 10% we're saving. A lot of people, myself included, find the world of investing pretty daunting.
I think many people feel that way, but Roy does a fantastic job of demystifying investing. He tells a really interesting story about a retiring stockbroker who had spent 30 years trying to pick individual winning stocks for his clients.
Oh, wow.
Out of 90 client accounts, only 7 were actually making money.
Ouch, that's a pretty dismal track record. It really highlights the risks associated with trying to time the market or pick individual stocks, even for someone with years of experience. So what's the alternative?
Roy's solution is simple and effective. Mutual funds. Mutual funds allow you to pool your money with other investors, giving you instant diversification and access to professional management. Instead of trying to pick individual stocks, you're essentially buying a tiny piece of hundreds or even thousands of companies. This spreads your risk and increases your chances of achieving consistent, long-term growth.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like diversifying your portfolio without having to become a Wall Street expert.
Uh-huh.
But with so many different mutual funds out there, how do you even begin to choose the right ones?
That's where a little research comes in, but Roy provides some excellent guidance. He stresses the importance of looking for funds with a solid long-term track record, low expense ratios, and a management team that aligns with your investment philosophy.
So it's not about chasing the latest hot fund or trying to time the market. It's about finding funds that have a history of delivering consistent returns and are managed in a way that you're comfortable with.
Exactly. And Roy also introduces this concept of dollar cost averaging. It's a brilliant strategy that takes the guesswork out of timing the market.
Oh,
Instead of trying to predict when the market will go up or down, you invest a fixed amount of money at regular intervals, regardless of market fluctuations.
okay, I'm intrigued. How does dollar cost averaging actually work in practice?
Think of it this way. When the market is down, your fixed investment buys more shares at a lower price. When the market is up, you buy fewer shares at a higher price. Over time, this approach helps to average out your purchase price and potentially reduce your overall risk. Let me illustrate this with a hypothetical example.
Perfect. I'm a big fan of examples. They always help to make these concepts click for me.
Imagine you decide to invest $100 per month in a particular mutual fund. In January, when the market is doing well, let's say you buy 10 shares at $10 each. But in February, the market takes a dip, and those same shares are now only worth $5 each.
Okay.
Your $100 now buys you 20 shares.
Wow.
In March, the market rebounds, and the shares are back up to $8 each. Your $100 now buys you 12.5 shares.
So even though the market was fluctuating, I was consistently buying shares, sometimes at a lower price, sometimes at a higher price.
Right. And over the long term, this consistent buying, regardless of market swings, can lead to a smoother investment experience and potentially higher returns compared to trying to time the market perfectly.
This is starting to feel much less intimidating.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a much more sustainable approach than constantly stressing about market ups and downs.
For sure. Roy also debunks some common investing myths, like the allure of market timing and the temptation to constantly chase performance by switching between different sector funds. He emphasizes that these strategies often backfire and lead to lower returns over time.
He's all about sticking with the fundamentals, right?
Yeah.
Finding solid companies, diversifying your portfolio, and letting the magic of compound interest do its thing.
Exactly. He's a big believer in value and growth investing, which means finding companies that are undervalued by the market but have strong potential for future growth. But even with a sound investment strategy, there are still factors like fees and taxes to consider.
Oh, yeah, those pesky details. I have to admit, I tend to glaze over when I hear about expense ratios and capital gains taxes.
Don't worry, Roy breaks it down in a way that's easy to understand. He explains that expense ratios, which are the fees associated with managing a mutual fund, are already factored into the reported returns you see, so you don't have to worry about any hidden costs eating away at your gains.
That's a relief. What about taxes? Those can be a bit of a headache, especially when it comes to investments.
He does touch on how to handle dividend distributions and capital gains taxes, emphasizing the importance of understanding how these can impact your overall investment returns.
This is all starting to make so much more sense. And the best part is, we're just scratching the surface here. We've got a whole lot more to uncover, including retirement planning, real estate, and a bunch of practical money management tips.
Right. But I think what's really resonating with me so far is Roy's emphasis on simplicity and common sense. He takes the fear and mystery out of personal finance and shows us that achieving financial peace of mind isn't just for experts or the super wealthy. It's attainable for anyone willing to learn and take action.
Exactly. And with Roy as our guide, it feels a lot less daunting, right? So stay tuned, folks, because we're about to unlock even more financial wisdom from the Wealthy Barber.
So we've covered saving and investing, those first steps, building that strong foundation.
Right, that 10% rule and making it automatic, all that. But what about retirement? It feels kind of like a distant concept, especially when you're younger. Is Roy thinking long-term here, too?
Yeah, you're right. Building a separate retirement fund is crucial, just as important as that 10% I've made it big fund. And you know what? He really drives home why starting early, even with small amounts, is so key to having a comfortable retirement.
Convince me. Why is starting early so important? I feel like I have plenty of time to worry about retirement later,
It's a common thought. But it all comes down to compound interest. That magical concept we were talking about earlier. The earlier you start, the more time your money has to grow exponentially. Even small contributions made consistently over, decades can add up to a big nest egg by the time you retire.
So it's not just how much you save, but how long that money has to compound, right?
Right.
That makes sense. But what about Social Security? Isn't that supposed to take care of us in retirement?
Roy's pretty realistic about Social Security. He acknowledges it'll likely be there as a safety net, but depending on it completely could be risky.
Oh,
Benefits could be reduced in the future, right? And the cost of living might jump faster than expected.
so it's best to think of Social Security as like an extra on top of our own retirement savings, not the main source of income.
Exactly. Roy actually encourages everyone to request their Social Security statement, just to get a personalized picture of what their potential benefits would be. It's good for a reality check,
Yeah.
helps you plan accordingly.
But that's smart. I've never actually done that.
Now for the fun part. Let's get into some of the different retirement savings plans Roy talks about in the book. He kicks things off with pension plans, which are becoming less common these days, but still important to understand, especially if you're working for a company or organization that offers one.
I've heard the term pension, but I'm not really sure how they work. Can you give us a quick breakdown?
Sure. A pension plan is basically a retirement plan where your employer puts in a certain amount of money each year to a fund, you see. And that fund will give you a fixed income for life once you retire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the amount you receive usually depends on your salary and how long you've worked there.
Oh, okay.
You
So
know,
it's like a guaranteed paycheck even after you stop working. That sounds pretty good.
it can be great. But there are a few things to watch out for. Roy explains this concept of integration, which means that your pension benefits might be reduced if your Social Security payments are higher.
So it's not always a simple calculation. You really need to understand the specifics of your own pension plan and how it works with Social Security.
Exactly. Now, moving beyond pensions, Roy gives us a bunch of other retirement savings options. He talks about IRAs, individual retirement accounts, which let you save for retirement with some tax advantages.
Okay.
He also gets into Roth IRAs, which offer tax-free withdrawals in retirement.
Okay, that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
What's the difference between a traditional IRA and a Roth IRA?
The main difference is when you pay taxes.
Oh, okay.
With a traditional IRA, your contributions may be tax deductible. That means you lower your taxable income right now, but you'll pay taxes on your withdrawals when you retire.
Okay.
With a Roth IRA, you contribute after tax dollars. So you're not getting a tax break up front. But the beauty of a Roth IRA is that your withdrawals in retirement are completely tax-free.
So it's like choosing between a tax break now or a tax break later. Which one's better?
Well, it really depends on your own situation, your financial goals. Roy suggests considering things like your current income, tax bracket, and how long you have until retirement to decide which type of IRA is the right fit for you.
Sounds like there's no one right answer for everyone when it comes to retirement planning.
Right. It's all about finding the strategies that work best for your specific situation and your goals. Roy also talks about other plans, like keto plans, designed for self-employed individuals and small business owners, and 401ks, which are those employer-sponsored retirement plans that often have matching contributions from your company.
Oh, yes, the 401k match. I've heard about that. It sounds like free money.
It pretty much is. If your employer offers a 401k match, Roy says, take advantage of it. It's essentially a guaranteed return on your investment and a fantastic way to boost your retirement savings.
So even if retirement feels super far off, it's important to start planning early, look into different savings options, and definitely take advantage of any employer matching contributions if you can.
Yeah.
This is starting to feel less overwhelming. But let's be honest, figuring out all these different retirement plans can be a bit daunting.
Absolutely, and Roy knows that. He highlights how valuable it can be to get personalized guidance from a financial planner. A qualified professional can help you figure out where you stand financially, project your retirement needs, and come up with a plan that matches your goals.
So we've got saving, investing, retirement planning all covered. What's next on Roy's list of financial wisdom?
Well, he tackles a topic that's close to a lot of people's hearts: real estate, often a big source of debate.
Ah, real estate, the American dream of owning a home. I bet Roy has some interesting views on this one.
You're right. He challenges the traditional wisdom that owning a home is always the best investment. He gives a really balanced view of the pros and cons of renting versus buying.
Okay, I'm curious. What's his take on renting? Isn't that always seen as throwing money away?
It's a common thought, but Roy argues that renting can actually make more sense financially for certain folks,
Well, okay.
especially those who value flexibility and mobility.
Right, right.
Renting keeps your cash flow more open. That means you can invest in other things or chase other financial goals.
So it's not always a clear-cut decision. Renting has advantages, especially if you're not ready to settle down or if you just don't want to deal with the hassle of owning a home.
Exactly. But he doesn't disregard homeownership either. He sees the financial benefits too. Things like building equity, the tax advantages of deducting mortgage interest and property taxes, and the chance for long-term price appreciation.
Those tax advantages are definitely appealing, especially if you're in a high tax bracket. And I mean, the idea of your home going up in value over time is pretty attractive.
He also digs into the idea of leveraging, which is basically using borrowed money, like your mortgage, to potentially get bigger returns. He shares a great story about Dave's parents, who bought their home with a pretty small down payment and ended up making a big profit when they sold it years later.
That's like a classic example of how real estate can be a powerful way to build wealth.
Mm.
But Roy probably also emphasizes being realistic about the risks, right?
Oh, absolutely. He warns against assuming real estate always goes up in value. He points out that things like location, timing, and market conditions are super important for determining your potential return on investment. He stresses doing your research, understanding the local market, and not overextending yourself financially.
So no blindly jumping into the real estate market expecting to get rich overnight. It takes planning, research, and a bit of luck.
Definitely. And Roy provides some practical advice when it comes to buying a home.
Nice.
He walks us through the good and bad of fixed rate versus adjustable rate mortgages, and he's strongly against those balloon mortgages, which can be risky for a lot of folks.
Yeah, I remember him saying something like, unless you want guys with guns on your front lawn, stick with a fixed-rate mortgage.
Hmm.
I appreciate how straightforward he is. No nonsense approach.
He also talks about other financing options for people who might not have a huge down payment, things like private mortgage insurance, PMI. And he encourages readers to balance investment potential with their own needs and wants when they're doing home improvements.
Okay.
You know?
It's about finding that balance between getting the most out of your investment and actually enjoying your home. After all, a home is more than just an investment. It's where you live and make memories, too.
Exactly. Now, ready for a little surprise. When it comes to managing money day to day and budgeting, Roy's approach might be unexpected.
Okay, what's the twist?
He tells the story about one of the barbershop regulars, James Murray, who totally ignored Roy's advice about budgeting. But he still achieved incredible financial success. Turns out, James was great at focusing on those big picture financial moves.
Like saving 10% and all that.
Exactly. He consistently put money into his retirement accounts and made smart investment choices. He had those basics down pat.
So he was like a big picture
Yeah.
financial planner, focused on the core stuff and didn't sweat the small details as much.
Exactly. This actually made Roy rethink his whole idea of budgeting. He realized that keeping track of every penny isn't always the key to financial success. It's more about getting those big picture financial decisions right first. That's what sets you up for long-term success.
So it's not about being super strict or denying yourself all the fun stuff. It's more about building a solid financial base first. And then you can decide how much structure you want for the rest of your spending.
Precisely. Whether it's detailed budgeting, setting savings goals for things you enjoy, or having a more flexible approach, the key is to find what works for you, something that matches your values.
Okay.
However, there's one thing Roy is super clear about. You got to pay down that high-interest debt quickly, especially credit card debt.
That makes sense. High interest debt can really hurt your progress.
Yeah, he even compares paying off a high-interest loan to getting a tax-free return on your money. Think about it. If you're paying 18% interest on a credit card, it's like earning 18% back risk-free just by paying off that debt.
It's like turning debt repayment into a saving strategy. That's a cool way to look at it. He also mentions how satisfying it is to save up for something you really want, that it can be more rewarding than that instant gratification.
Yeah, he tells a funny story about Tom, one of the three friends, who's hesitant to comparison shop. And he learned a valuable lesson about being thrifty.
I love those stories. They really bring Roy's advice to life. Make it feel relatable.
For sure. Ready for some more investment insights? Roy's got more to share about investing wisely.
Hit me with it. I'm ready for more of Roy's wisdom.
He goes back to the importance of discipline in investing. He reminds us that the old saying, buy low, sell high, sounds easy, but it takes courage and patience to actually do it.
Yeah.
You have to resist following the crowd, avoid emotional decisions, and stay focused on your long-term goals.
Easier said than done. It's hard not to get swept up in the excitement when the market's doing well or freak out when it takes a dive.
Totally. He also debunks that buy high, sell higher mentality, which often leads to chasing returns and taking on unnecessary risk.
Okay.
And he questions the idea that real estate always goes up in value. He acknowledges that it's historically been a pretty safe and profitable investment, but there's no guarantee it'll stay that way forever.
So even with real estate, you need to be smart about it. Do your research. Be realistic about the potential ups and downs.
Exactly. And Roy makes a key point about paying off debt, especially non-deductible debt like high-interest credit cards, before you jump into investing. He gives an example of someone. Exactly. Roy points out the benefits of using tax-advantaged accounts like retirement plans and taking advantage of tax breaks that come with home ownership, like deducting mortgage interest. He also talks about possibly refinancing consumer debt into a home equity loan if it makes sense for you, and the idea of timing deductible expenses to save the most on taxes.
Wow, I'm learning so much. Starting to feel like a financial pro.
And lastly, he talks about emergency funds. This is where he challenges the traditional idea of having 4 6 months of gross income saved up. He thinks it might be too much for some people.
That does seem like a lot of money to have just sitting there just in case. What's his alternative?
He's more for a personalized approach based on your circumstances, risk tolerance, and access to other funds if an emergency pops up.
Okay.
He talks about the advantages of having a line of credit as a safety net, and he emphasizes having some cash readily available, for unexpected expenses and peace of mind.
So it's about being prepared for the unexpected without keeping too much of your money in those low-return savings accounts.
Right. It's about having a plan that makes you feel secure without being overly cautious.
This is all such great advice. Roy's really thought of everything. But I'm sensing our time with him, at least in this book, is winding down. What's the last bit of wisdom he gives? That final takeaway message.
He basically says it's graduation day for Dave, Kathy, and Tom.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, he congratulates them on finishing their crash course in personal finance, but it's not just a pat on the back.
There's always more to it with Roy, right?
Yeah.
What's the real graduation gift he gives them?
He sums up the key principles, like a reminder of everything they've learned. Save 10% of your net income and invest it wisely. Create a will and sort out your estate planning. Make sure you have enough life insurance and the right kind. Come up with a solid retirement plan and take advantage of those tax-advantaged savings options. Make smart choices about homeownership. And of course, manage your day-to-day finances in a way that works for you.
So much good advice packed into those barbershop conversations.
Yeah. But the real gift, I think, is the challenge he throws at them.
What's that?
He asks, what's one small step you can take today to actually put these principles into action? Start building your path to financial freedom.
That's great. It's not enough to just know this stuff. We have to do something with it.
Right.
That first step, even a tiny one, is what gets the ball rolling.
And that's what I love about The Wealthy Barber. It takes the mystery out of personal finance and makes it feel possible for everyone. You don't need to be a financial expert or super rich to achieve financial security. It's about grasping those basic ideas, those common sense principles Roy lays out, and being consistent, making choices that fit your goals.
It's like Roy says, good financial planning is nothing more than common sense. It's about taking charge of your money, not the other way around. And what's so inspiring is that anyone can start right now, no matter where they're at financially.
Yeah, totally.
So there you have it, our deep dive into The Wealthy Barber. We covered a lot, from basic saving and investing to retirement planning, real estate, even practical tips for managing money day to day. But the real journey starts now as we take what we've learned and put it into practice.
Roy's wisdom reminds us that financial peace of mind isn't a finish line, it's a journey. It's about making smart decisions, developing those healthy financial habits, and staying focused on our goals.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into The Wealthy Barber, I'd like you all to ask yourselves that same question Roy asked his students. What's one small step you can take today to get closer to your financial goals? Remember, financial freedom is within reach, one smart choice at a time. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep those financial goals in sight.